$9,000 in 2013.
But you're talking about a very strange point in our housing history.
Those who were renters in 1999, bought homes, and lost the home saw a median decrease in their net wealth of $3,000. That's a decrease, and that's damaging, and that's painful to families, and we should do what we can to avoid it.
They lost $3,000
on median. The difference in their net wealth
by losing
between
their
1999 and
because
2013
they didn't put any money into their house
was $3,000. So that's not necessarily just what happens in their house. It's their total median net wealth in 1999 versus 2013. Those who were renters became owners and then returned to renting. So a median decrease in their net wealth of $3,000.
Was a lot of that because during the housing boom, people bought their homes with zero down? I mean, nothing in it at all.
It could be that's part of it, and that's right. If you don't,
because
if you
put
equity
20% down and you lose it to foreclosure, you're losing that 20% if you haven't lost that wealth.
Exactly, and so part of that question is how broadly do you allow households to take that risk? So the second piece of this is we started with the financial side. To the first question that you asked, I want to add, I think one of the core benefits of homeownership, that certainly there's a wealth component, but stability is the other. So when we do literature reviews of the benefits of homeownership for child well-being, for health outcomes, for other things, for other measures of well-being, stability of being able to stay in the same home and stability of the payment and predictability of that payment are some of the metrics that are central to those analyses and that show the largest benefits.
Even with the change in the single-family rental market now that there are so many more single-family rental homes? So you're looking in horror at me.
So certainly single-family...
There's fluctuation in rents. I don't think there's as much stability in the rents, and we've seen... what we hear is that investors charge sometimes 30% more for those single-family homes than a homeowner would pay.
Right, to start, but they're holding on to, whereas a lot of people thought that the investors were going to sell these homes and get rid of them, they are holding on to them in thousands and thousands. You talk to the folks at Blackstone, and they see this as a very long-term play.
And are their rents stable?
Well, they're not changing. They're not varying widely. They're higher because some of these homes are more expensive, and you're getting a 3-bedroom house as opposed to a 3-bedroom apartment. It's going to cost you more.
Well, Blackstone's, they are coming into play because they have the capital to utilize it, and this is where I think for the Main Street Americans have to have equal access in fighting off Blackstone's to say that I want that home. And the way to do that is, FHA has played a critical role in providing opportunity for first-time buyers. The social benefits of home ownership, things like the children's test scores at school or SAT scores, are substantially higher for homeowner compared to renter of similar socioeconomic circumstances. Jonathan mentioned about the health outcomes and so forth. They're all positive social outcomes. However, when there was a foreclosure, all those social benefits collapsed. It actually turned negative. So we need to assure that when we are promoting home ownership, that it is a sustainable, successful ownership and not an artificial bubble ownership that leads to foreclosure, because that is completely harmful in terms of the wealth destruction as well as the negative social consequences from it. But I think we overcorrected downward and certainly trying to provide, say, public-private partnership to bring additional access to mortgages are all good. But I think one other component is we have to increase supply. By increasing supply, it would tame the home price growth and therefore make it more accessible for middle-class, first-time buyers to become owners. So we need to increase supply to tame the home price growth.
Well, and you also have to open access to mortgages, right? But, we did overcorrect on the mortgage side, but there are not a lot of products out there. You look at FHA, you say, okay, that's a 3.5% down. And I realize we were in the home of FHA here, but the premiums are high now. And there was going to be a premium cut, and then there wasn't. What do you see the mortgage market in its current form being able to do to help home ownership?
Right. So we have seen an expansion of credit supply from, again, to your point, from investors who are willing to buy FHA products and loans. And so we have been seeing growth in that throughout 2017 pretty much. The other side of that is on the jumbo side. We've also seen growth there for different reasons, but just want to sort of set that up. I think, as far as credit availability goes, there are a few things that come to mind. Christy brought up a good point about sort of modernizing our processes. And one of the things that has been discussed, one of the issues that has been discussed is credit scoring. So that's one aspect that has to be sort of updated over the years, and that might change the pool of eligible borrowers if we can more accurately assess their credit. So that's one major item, and I also think that and along with that, we've been working. The industry has been working on a lot more, spending a lot more money in technology. So I think technology, again, in this generation is critical. It's hugely important for many different reasons. One is really from the sort of customer experience side of things, sort of educating the borrower, making sure the transparency is there as you go through the loan process, and then when you have sort of internal transparency and coordination, for all organizations or any kind of product or service, it just is a better product, so to speak. So the innovation there, I think, is going to contribute to improvements in the mortgage process, and ultimately helping borrowers sort of understand the process better, and to the point of sustainable and affordable credit.
It's
growth.
interesting you bring up technology, because
Right.
there are a lot of new companies out there that are pitching us all the time to talk about their new app or this new thing that's going to make millennials understand how to get a mortgage, because apparently millennials don't understand, but every other generation did understand. And so we have to have this app that has 3 steps, and you have to be able to get a mortgage in 7 minutes, so that, and you're pre-approved and everything. And that seems to be the way technology is going. And, it's a slippery slope to get back to where we were once before. Certainly there are not the investors and the chopping and slicing of mortgage-backed securities that we had back then. But this push to get mortgages out to millennials as fast as possible and get their credit scores, we've started to mess with credit scores a little bit on what's in the score, what's out of the score, what was there a student loan in the score anymore. We're changing the methods again. I start to see the edges coming
Sure.
back in. At what point?
Well, just to clarify, when I was talking about the borrower experience, it's really sort of from the, I guess, notification or transparency standpoint. So there's no more sort of fine print type issues,
Right.
And just sort of
Right, people
real
understand that
time.
they do actually have to make a monthly payment.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's not so much a let's get it done quickly, more so than sort of an ease of having the stack of papers in front of you that not everyone will go through or can go through.
That really has to be acknowledged, the role of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and pushing for clear, plain English and limited English proficiency access around these terms is really has to be acknowledged, and we're fighting to protect the CFPB every day for those reasons. And people really do need to understand what they're getting into on the mortgage contract.
Yeah, and if I can add to that just quickly, housing counseling has a critical role to play there too. Now, that may not, the scale of housing counseling may not reach every potential borrower, but in our focus groups of home buyers who went through the counseling process, one of the things that comes out strongly from them is the reduction in stress in navigating the home purchase process, that having gone through that process, having connected with a counselor, having someone that they know that if they're interacting with an agent or with a mortgage broker and a red flag goes up, they have someone that they can call and ask, is this something I should be concerned about? Is this standard practice? Anything else? And so just to highlight the role of potentially having advice throughout that process or a counselor to turn to.
Yeah, it's a very low cost effectiveness on the counseling. Veterans Affairs Mortgage, which is not part of HUD, but one thing we recognize in the zero down payment Veterans Affairs mortgages is that it has performed quite well even during the downturn, even with zero down payment. And when we ask realtor members about their clients why this occurred, and they often say that if somehow a soldier misses a payment, quickly a drill sergeant will call them up and say, what's going on? Not as a threat, but more as a trying to help out what's, part. So pre-purchase counseling as well as post-purchase counseling, I think, goes a long way in assuring that we have a successful ownership because we know that through the life changes, for a few people, it's very disruptive process of losing job or certain hospital bill that arises.
If I can add one more. HUD right now is in the field with the largest randomized experiment of pre-purchase housing counseling. So I should disclose that I'm an advisor to it. But nonetheless, they've successfully recruited 5,800 potential first-time homebuyers in 28 cities around the country that are randomized into 2 types of housing counseling and a no-services control group that can be used to understand the experiences of first-time homebuyers as they go through that process. So the full first round of impact analysis will come out middle of next year, but there's an early insights report that's available on HUDuser.com or .gov, HUDuser.gov, and there's 4 measures that they measure impacts for. 3 of them show positive effects. One of them is the likelihood that a home buyer will reach out to their mortgage lender before missing a mortgage payment to see if there is a possibility of forbearance or a repayment plan or some other intervention that might help them avoid foreclosure. So certainly promising prospects for successful outcomes and more to come.
It's important to talk about some of the drivers for that could put somebody at risk, and it's not a lot of the things that people associate with the foreclosure crisis, right? It's, as Lawrence mentioned,
divorce.
It's a medical bill, right?
Yeah.
It's death in a family. They're life events that we need to plan for, and we need to be able to help, and we can help. I think a third of the folks who apply to our mortgage assistance program, which is a 0% grant that can be repaid when you have the ability to do so, when you either refi or sell the home. A third of them said unexpected medical costs were a driver for their default. But, it's a very cost-effective housing counseling, and these short-term investments are a great model around the public-private partnership where you can get in there early, have a good success, and then get somebody back on their feet. So there are a lot of myths around, what drove people into default during the foreclosure crisis that we will be trying to bust for years.
Well, it's interesting you make it sound a little bit like it's hard to find housing counseling. We need to put more money into it. But all I seem to hear, and I know a lot of this is PR, and I'm certainly not defending any big banks, but a lot of the big banks, the Wells Fargos out there, which I know is kind of a dirty word right now, but the big banks have started these huge counseling programs. They have portals that they want to get into, the 3% down payments. You have to have counseling there are a lot of other groups that are, and maybe they're just bombarding me with PR and I'm being the dumb journalist or something, but all I hear about from banks is we have the greatest counseling programs for if you have trouble, we have the hotline, we have these web portals where you have one direct person that you're going to be talking to, and maybe that's all a big myth, but that's what they seem to be selling right now.
Well, let's talk about what HUD-approved housing counseling is. It's independent. If you're in distress, if you're in foreclosure, it should be free. It's provided by a certified, trained professional, and it's provided by a nonprofit, right? So this is somebody who doesn't have skin in the game. So I'm not sure whether the banks are talking about their outreach to distressed borrowers in a way that...
No, it's a lot to new homeowners, to new borrowers.
To new borrowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, over 2,000 HUD-certified housing counseling groups in the country. There's a lot of great folks out there, but we think we could, increase the number of people that get access to housing counseling by sort of tenfold to really penetrate. So there's way more need than we have capacity right now, and we think that I'm really happy to hear that you're getting bombarded with that because we really want consumers to understand what housing counseling is, and we often hear that folks don't hear about it until they're about to go to closing, right? And so that's, you've got your contract signed, the appraisal's done, you've had the house inspected, and then somebody says, oh, you need to go to a 6-hour, counseling course. So that's not the way we really want to integrate housing counseling into the full life of the loan and the full loan origination process. So we want folks to be talking to housing counselors way earlier than that on the pre-purchase side. And again, on the stabilization side, we want people to be getting help as soon as they're at risk of missing a mortgage payment. So the earlier you talk to someone, the better your outcomes will be.
But do you think enough young people, and I say young in their early 30s, who might be those first home buyers, I also I get so many studies every day, I can't even tell you, but everybody wants to send a study about, the big one seems to be millennials don't know anything about how to buy a house. They don't know that they can get a mortgage. They don't know that you don't have to put 20% down. Is this, again, just more PR? Or, Lawrence, you're out there with people who sell houses every day.
In fact, we take survey of consumers consistently on various metrics, and then regarding the mortgage availability, there is a misperception. Many millennials believe that they have to save up for 20% down payment. They do not understand that FHA mortgages would be